Aloha, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Triple F Podcast, Faith and Family First. We all remember that on June 24th, 2022, the Dobbs decision came down, effectively overturning Roe versus Wade. So the decision-making was thrown back to the states. The red states immediately began making laws that made it more difficult to have abortions, as was their right, and the blue states immediately jumped into action. So you want to stay tuned for this conversation to find out what Hawaii's doing. So let's chat about that. Hello, Mr. Jim Hochberg.
Well, good morning, afternoon, evening.
Wherever people are and watching this, it could be any time of day.
That's
so
right.
We welcome all our viewers and listeners. Hello, KESU Radio on Kauai and K-Light Radio right here on Oahu, and our YouTube viewers and Spotify and iTunes and whatnot and so forth.
Yes.
So Jim, you and I were absolutely fascinated, but not surprised by the recent decision of Governor Ige to do an executive order on the abortion issue right here in the state. And then, of course, candidate Josh Green, who's running for governor, also jumped in and said that he was going to do something on the abortion issue should he be elected. So let's chat about that today.
We should.
So let's first talk about the executive order, which was done on October 11th. And it was Executive Order 2205. And it's entitled Protecting Access to Reproductive Health Care Services. Now, you and I did a show on executive orders.
We did.
And we talked about how executive orders really, the power that they have only is for as long as that person is in office, whoever does the executive order.
Well, they don't automatically die, but they can be overturned by the next
whoever takes over. So now Hawaii is, and we're going to talk in the next show about where Hawaii is on the abortion list as far as the Americans United for Life, and we're very low on the list. But so why do you think when Planned Parenthood actually celebrates Hawaii and where we are on the abortion issue, why do you think David Ige thought there was a need to do an executive order?
So first of all, I think we need to distinguish Josh Green's version from Governor Ige's version.
So let's talk about Governor Ige's first, and then we can talk about what Josh is wanting to do.
So a handful of Democrat governors across the United States have similar kinds of executive orders that don't do anything to make abortion more readily available or protected or anything else. All our governor's order and these other handful of Democrat governors' executive orders said was, we are not going to let our Department of Health essentially share any data with any other states who want the data for the purpose of punishing people because it's not legal to get the abortion in the state of the requesting government. So basically what he said is, we're not going to share any data with you related to people who you want to prosecute, Mr. Red State.
Well, I laughed about that because you and I know that, okay, so what they're saying is that these red states, if their young girls come to Hawaii and get an abortion and then they demand for this information, the information shall not be presented, right? So that's what it seems to say on the surface.
But before we go past that point on the surface, I don't think there's a single state that is intending to punish the pregnant woman anyway.
Well,
it's the service providers or the drivers to the abortion, or that, not the pregnant woman herself. Do you know of any? I don't know of any.
No, and you're right, and that's why this executive order, when you read it, it's specific that it's protecting, the doctors and the nurses and the hospitals.
But if the doctors come with the girl to do the abortion here from a state where they're not allowed to do it, I think they have to be licensed to do the abortion here. I mean, this whole thing made no sense to me.
Well, it is interesting, but I just kind of, laughed because they're making like, hey, we're not going to give this information. Should you ask? Now, Jim, you and I, have we not personally tried to get information?
I've never had an abortion, no.
Well, no. Have we not tried to get information about
from the
abortions?
Health Department. And actually the law requires that the Department of Health and abortion providers let me rephrase. It requires that fetal death people, which includes abortion providers, have to report fetal deaths to the Department of Health. And the Department of Health is supposed to make that data, along with all the other health data, not with the people's names, but with the numbers and the ethnicity and all the demographic stuff, available. And we have a very hard time finding it on the health department's website. And the only way I ever did find it was to call and mention that if they didn't help me and I filed a Freedom of Information Act, I'd be suing. And then they helped me find it.
Well, yeah. And we're going to be talking in the next show about where we are on the Americans United for Life list. And what's interesting is Americans United for Life used the Hawaii Open Records Law, which is Hawaii Revised Statutes 91.1, to get information from them.
But they didn't.
And they didn't. So I'm just kind of laughing that they're going through this whole big thing about how they're not going to provide information, but they're not, even for us in the state, we're not getting the information.
Correct.
So I think that what is there to hide?
Okay, but
what is there to hide, Jim?
But let's look from 30,000 feet. You're in a 747 flying over this dumb thing.
Am I in first class or am I in economy? Okay, well,
and
that
you have
makes
your
a big
favorite
difference.
wine and you're in good shape.
Okay.
So the governor is saying that he needs to protect people that come to Hawaii to get abortions because they can't get abortions in their own home states.
Because they can afford plane tickets to fly over here.
The attorney general, the chief of police, whoever in Ohio or Texas or wherever is going to try to punish the abortion provider. If the abortion happened here, they have no jurisdiction over the people in Hawaii. Their jurisdiction ends at the border of their county or their state, which is why Bonnie and Clyde could rob a bank in Nebraska and drive to Arkansas and not get arrested. This is absolutely useless. It's absolutely meaningless from a legal perspective. However, I think it carries tremendous political cover. They're trying to make abortion part of the campaign. And we've seen Josh Green and Duke Iona talking about this issue when the Dobbs decision changed nothing in the state of Hawaii.
That's right.
So that's what I think this is. But it's really interesting what they say here, now therefore under paragraph 1. Except as otherwise required by law or as required by order of the court. Okay, so they could be forced to give all this information anyway, number 1.
And then he's acknowledging that right here in the executive order.
Well, he can't refuse.
Right.
So they're putting in.
Yeah.
But subject to those exemptions, his executive departments and agencies will not provide any information, including patient medical records. They can't give patient medical records anyway. Patient level data, they can't give personal identifying information
all part of HIPAA, right?
Anyway, correct. Or related billing information, they can't give any of this anyway. Or expend state resources in furtherance of an inquiry, investigation, or proceeding initiated in or by another state that seeks to impose personal liability, criminal penalties, civil penalties for being involved in an abortion. So most of what they're talking about, they're not allowed to give anyway. To the extent that they're not going to spend state money answering Freedom of Information Act requests, they're just going to get sued and they're going to have to spend all the extra money defending themselves. So one of the things that drives me crazy in the state of Hawaii, the state of my home, I grew up here, it's stupid.
Okay. We apologize. Go ahead, Jim.
So, what is the political angle?
Well, I think that's why when I was looking at how the public was looking at this has done absolutely nothing, because the people in the state of Hawaii that support abortion and a woman's right to choose, we're applauding this. Great job, great job. And all the people that do not support abortion, we're going, what are you doing? That's a bad. So nothing has changed. And when you're reading this through the eyes of an attorney, you're saying that legally it's saying absolutely nothing. So this was just a political statement to appease one group of people.
And if you look at the very end of the section 2 in the whereases, it says that the policy doesn't apply if the person who is the subject of the request for arrest or surrender was physically present in the requesting state at the time of the commission of the alleged offense and fled from that state to here. So and I guess maybe the Uber driver in Ohio that brings the girl to the airport to fly to Hawaii to get her abortion when you can't have abortions with that level of maturity of the baby in the womb or something. I mean, this is just dumb.
Jim, I'm looking at this just through the eyes of a simple person, right? So I live in a red state and I decide I want to have an abortion. Why would I fly to the state of Hawaii, but coming up with a $1,200 ticket round trip, plus the hotel, plus the transportation? Even if I'm staying with a friend, it's expensive to fly here. To have an abortion when I could just drive into a neighboring state that happens to be blue. So first of all, I would hate to see Hawaii become a safe haven for people just to fly over here and have a vacation, because after having an abortion, it would be emotionally draining for them. So that way they could go to the beach and just relax and get some sun after this, because it was tough.
Well, if it was winter time on the mainland, they might want to recover in the warmth.
But again, I'm talking about, it costs money to have an abortion unless you have a certain type of health plan that covers it or whatever. But the point is that
you'd spend a lot more than the cost of that.
Okay. I mean, I see. And I mean, people are free in this country to fly wherever they want to. Okay. And I get that. So it's like, okay, if somebody wants to fly here to have an abortion, our law lets them do it. You can have an abortion in Hawaii and be from whatever state.
Well, if you were a 15-year-old girl or a 16-year-old girl and your grandma lived here, maybe you would want to come here to be with family and get your abortion.
Well, maybe. And like I said, I thought I saw a story, and I'll try to find it and put the link if I do. I thought I saw a story where somebody did fly over here. There was a
story about that. But there's one more interesting thing in this executive order. So point 4, which is just before the end of the thing, they actually define reproductive health care services. And you know how you see commercials for Planned Parenthood where they say abortion is healthcare, and all of the chanting in the rallies, abortion is healthcare? Finally, they're saying in a legal document, executive order from the governor,
which now
reproductive health care services means all medical, surgical, counseling, or referral services related to human reproductive system, including but not limited to services relating to pregnancy, contraception, or the termination of a pregnancy. So now they actually have that in a legal document.
Well, I have a legal question for you. So at the end of section 3,
$450 an hour, hit me.
Okay. Who should we bill? I don't know, somebody from a blue state. We'll build California. They won't even know. Okay. So if you look back, though, at number 3, you skipped over that to go to 4. The last part of that sentence talks about, what happens. Okay, let me go so I can read. I don't want to take it out of context. So it's talking about the director of the state of Hawaii Department of Commerce.
These are the licensed people.
The licensed people. Okay, so if you go to the last sentence, Jim, the last part of that last sentence, it's a very long sentence, but I want to start with, no, I guess I better read the whole. Jim, that whole thing is a sentence.
It's one sentence.
Okay, it's a very long sentence. I apologize. Just bear with me, people. The director of the state of Hawaii Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs is directed to work with the boards of professional licensure operating under the department's supervision to consider whether to implement policies that will ensure that no person shall be disqualified from licensure or subject to discipline by a Hawaii Board of Professional Licensure for providing, receiving, or assisting in the provision or receipt of reproductive health care services, or as a consequence of any judgment, discipline, or other sanction threatened or imposed under the laws of another state. And here's the important part: so long as the services as provided would have been lawful and consistent with standards for good professional practice in the state. Explain to me how we find out if Planned Parenthood is following good standards.
Well, Planned Parenthood isn't licensed, is it?
They should be. They're a medical facility, and they claim they're a medical facility.
Well,
so aren't medical facilities
they're
in the state?
licensed by the DCCA, Professional Licensing Division.
They are medical facilities.
So I can understand this by virtue of my being a lawyer.
Okay.
I have a license to practice law in the state of Hawaii. Not under the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, but under the Supreme Court.
Which makes sense.
But I'll assume for all the other professional licenses, it works the same way. Every year I have to file a renewal of my license and pay a bunch of money and answer these questions. And one of the questions is always, have you been disciplined during the this past year and in any jurisdiction? And my understanding is if I am disciplined here or anywhere,
right,
the Supreme Court, the licensing office, will notify all the other states that I might also be licensed to practice law in. And therefore, if you are unethical and you get in trouble, it follows you everywhere. You can't move to another state and be free.
Well, and it works that way for doctors too.
Okay,
I've
that's
seen
what I'm
where
suggesting.
yeah. So, but my question is, the law allows Planned Parenthood to function. People may not like that, but Planned Parenthood is a legal organization in the state.
But I don't know that it's got a license from the DCCA professional licensing. I don't know.
Well, they tell everybody they're medical facilities. Remember, one of the arguments
they probably have some form of a license.
Right,
then.
because one of the arguments they have against the pregnancy resource centers is they make the claim that these pregnancy resource centers are not medical facilities and therefore they should be licensed.
Well, it depends on if they have doctors or not.
Right.
Some do, some don't.
So if Planned Parenthood is going around saying that they are medical facilities, then they should be licensed, which means that there should be they should have inspections and they should have reporting.
They
and people should be.
So they should probably have those kinds of requirements, but maybe abortion facilities in this state don't because the legislature doesn't want to make them. I don't know.
Well, and that's my point. My question is that we can get mad at Planned Parenthood because we are people that support life, but the law is the law, and they need to work within the law. And I just want to make sure that if they're promoting their business, just like any business is promoting business in the state, that they're not going to be covered and protected from having to do their reporting because they don't want people to know and whatever information they're trying to hide.
Well, we don't know whether they're actually doing the fetal death reporting because we can't find it at the Department of Health.
So that's my point. It's like, look, how about we just start with the law and what's legal and make sure that everybody are following the law? Because isn't that what they do against the pregnancy resource centers? Do they not question whether the pregnancy resource centers are operating lawfully and doing the things they're supposed to do, right? Isn't that their argument? So shouldn't our argument as responsible citizens in the state of Hawaii just make sure that these guys who are doing medical procedures are doing it according to the law?
You would think so, yes. But what I would say, to throw a little bit of reality water on your argument, in the last 15 years, since Obama became president, our country has seriously developed a multi-tier justice system, and the law doesn't apply the same to everybody. If the Democrats are in control to be enforcing, because they don't enforce against their friends and they do enforce against their political opposition. We see it all the time today. It slowly crept in, and now that's what we're doing. So would I like it to be fair and balanced and equally applied? Absolutely. Am I surprised that it's not?
No. And I guess that's my bottom line is that I want to be able to say with full acceptance and belief and support that our pregnancy resource centers are operating within the law. So when they're doing their ministry or for the ones that are medical facilities, that they are operating within the law. And I've talked to the ones that are medical centers, and they are proud of what they do and they are following the law. I'm saying that we as a responsible citizen in the state of Hawaii need to be asking that same question of Planned Parenthood. So I'm not saying,
and we can, but I don't
that's
think
where we have
they'll
to
answer.
start. Well, and they might not. But what is our responsibility? Okay, so that's what that's what David Ige did. But now
I think Josh Green came out first.
He might have. In fact, I think he did
later, like a week or two.
I think he did.
Ige came out.
But what I wanted to do is start with the Ige because he is the person in office right now. And now we're jumping into someone who's running for that office. So it's something that they will do if they get elected. So if Josh Green is elected as governor in the state of Hawaii, he went public saying that his first act would be to do an executive order. So this would be executive order number 2. You've reviewed them. They are different on what they are trying to accomplish. So let's jump into what Josh wants to do.
Josh Green, who's a medical doctor, so he should know exactly what these medical things are, more than David Ige, who's only an engineer. And so what Josh Green's, and all I have is the press coverage, right? I don't have it. He didn't write anything. He just made statements to the press. But the quote is, "My administration will take action on day one to ensure that the rights of women in Hawaii are protected. We will not allow extreme laws from other states to threaten reproductive health care rights in our state." Okay.
Is that happening?
What is the law in our state?
In regards to abortion?
The law in our state is Hawaii Revised Statutes, Chapter 453-16. And the headline is, "Intentional Termination of Pregnancy, Penalties, Refusal to Perform." This is the law that was passed in 1970, legalizing abortion before Roe v. Wade.
Right.
And what does it say? So it says, no abortion shall be performed in the state unless. So that's interesting. The first thing is no abortion. If you want to have an abortion, you got to have these things.
Right.
So Josh Green's, "We will not allow laws from other states to threaten reproductive health care rights." He's going to have to change his own statute. Well, let's see what it says. "Unless the abortion is performed by a licensed physician or surgeon or licensed osteopathic physician and surgeon. And the abortion is performed in a hospital licensed by the Department of Health or operated by a federal government or agency, or in a clinic or physician or osteopathic physician's office." So it has to be by a licensed guy. It has to be in a licensed place.
And licensed in the state of Hawaii.
Correct. So if you think you can freely get an abortion, you're wrong, because you can't in Hawaii. And then B, abortion means an operation to intentionally terminate the pregnancy of a non-viable fetus, which is before 24-ish weeks, right?
I think it's 16 weeks here.
Well, no, viability is a scientific condition.
No, I know, but I think here in Hawaii,
they've decided 16 weeks. Okay, so you can only get a termination of a non-viable baby in the womb, which means at 16 weeks. So Josh Green wants to make sure not to allow extreme laws from other states to threaten reproductive health care rights in our state. There are some states out there that are more extreme, but most aren't. It's very interesting. And then it goes on that the termination of a pregnancy of a viable fetus is not included in this section. So you cannot get an abortion of a viable fetus in the state of Hawaii. Since 1970, it was modified in 2008, and 2006 is when the modification came through. So that's very interesting to me. So Josh Green's, I don't know, what do you want to call it, temper tantrum or something? He's actually signaling to the legislature, I think, he wants to change our law to become more extremely supportive of aborting viable babies. That's what I think this is. And that ties into votes with our upcoming election and stuff like that. What do you think?
I think that right now, because what you're seeing in a lot of the newspapers, right, is that people are saying that this is the issue that's going to bring people to the polls.
Some people.
Well,
desperate Democrats are saying
that's what they're saying, right?
Correct.
They're saying that this is the issue, that it's going to cause women. In fact, I saw some of the comments on this particular article that they talked about this, that, this is the issue that is going to bring women to vote, because more women vote on this issue than any other issue. But what's happening is, and I don't know, I mean, I know we always say that Hawaii is different, Jim, but I would say that Hawaii is in the same boat as the rest of the statistics that are coming out, where people are saying what they really care about is how much electricity costs now, how much gas costs, can I put food on the table, are we about to be in war? Because of what's happening with China and Taiwan and what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. I think that's the thing that people are looking at right now. Yes, there are a group of people that are passionate about abortion, but no matter what Josh Green does or what Ige does, the abortion law in Hawaii is not going to, the legislature is made up of pro-choice legislators.
So I think that the legislature next year, if Josh Green presents a more liberal bill to make partial birth abortion and everything before it legal, they'll pass it, I think.
Well, and they could do it very easily.
Correct.
And that's
they would just do it because they can.
Let's do the broken record thing, Jim, because you and I do the broken record thing all the time. This is why we always get frustrated when we get all these emails and texts from people saying, why aren't you guys passing some pro-life bills? Well, first of all, if a pro-life bill is even introduced, which it could be, we have a few legislators who are pro-life and they might introduce a bill, they will tell you that nobody wants to hear it.
Correct.
The bill is not going to be scheduled for hearing.
Because in Hawaii, Planned Parenthood gives a lot more time, effort, money, and other resources to politics than pro-lifers do. That's just a fact.
And one of the things, so the Hawaii Family Forum voter guide is out and elections are coming up next week. So you want to make sure, if you have not gotten a copy of the voter guide, go to hawaiifamilyforum.org, get your voter guide. And one of the things we recommend is that you check out the campaign spending, right?
Correct.
Because
where'd they get their money?
You want to find out the candidate that you're going to support, who supports them. That's going to tell you everything you need to know about that candidate. I think that we have to start being a little bit more akamai about how we cast our votes.
Well, to get back to the point you were making, and it relates to casting our vote. When things are going well, we got plenty of money, we're not at war, when things are comfy in America, an abortion issue could be a big political voting mover of decision making. But I think when you can't afford gas, when there's no formula on the shelves for your babies, when electricity doubles, when those kind of the hierarchy of needs issues come around, that's daily. Every time you go to the store to get groceries, you pay more. You see it.
Right.
Every time you get gas, you pay it. You see it. You can only get an abortion once a year, I think. And everybody doesn't get pregnant. And everybody that gets pregnant doesn't even want an abortion. So when it's the big deal because everything else isn't a deal, maybe it moves votes. For non-political people, I think this time what's going to move votes, and what I would urge people watching this to do, is to not vote because of Dobbs and abortion. Vote because of your expenses at the gas station, the grocery store.
Yeah, and as we always remind people, that your vote keeps on voting.
Correct.
And you want to make sure that when you put your check mark next to that name, remember that that person, when they get into office, is going to keep on voting on issues. So just keep that in mind when you cast your vote.
I like this show so much, I want to ask people to sponsor it.
Okay. Jim wants you to sponsor the show. He's talking to you. You know, you with the coffee in your hand, that's you. So get on it. Anyway, make sure you like, share, subscribe. If you're on YouTube, hello to our viewers on Kauai and Oahu. Make sure you stay plugged in, because next week you're going to find out exactly where Hawaii stands on abortion. Mahalo, everybody.
Aloha.